Minot City revenue will come from a variety of places. Just over 14% is projected to come from property taxes. It's around the same amount as last year. About 20% will be sourced from intergovernmental revenue and about another 20% from transfers between funds. City Manager Harold Stewart says they're gradually becoming less dependent on property tax and more on sales tax.
A couple of council meetings ago, we presented information that showed that about 80% of our property tax revenue goes to supporting our police and fire department.
A public hearing for the city's budget is scheduled for September 18th.